So I deleted politics from my life for 60 days and I forgot about the election. This is the craziest story, and I want to share it with you today in hopes that it might inspire you to do the same. So, the craziest story. My son said to me this morning when I was getting ready, "Hey, Mom, who do you think's going to win the election tomorrow?" And I literally almost fell over in shock. I had forgotten about the election. I had totally 100% forgotten about the election. And this was absolutely insane to me because I was very wound up in politics. I was very wound up in watching everything going on. I especially got caught up in it during COVID and after COVID. And I was very invested in finding out what's going on so that I could keep my family and me safe and protected and exit the matrix and the whole thing. And so it was absolutely astounding to me that I had forgotten about the election. This all happened over 60 days, and I want to tell you about it today. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, grab a drink, and let's get into the tea. So during COVID and during post COVID, I did get very caught up in politics and really starting to subscribe to more people in my feeds and more independent news sources, and really wanting to find out and dig in really, really deep to know what was going on and to do lots of independent research. So I really stayed abreast on what was happening. But over the course of all of that whole 2020 to 2022 craziness, I realized at some point that it was not helping me heal. It was not helping my health. It was not doing anything good for me. And it was leading to a dysregulated nervous system. It was leading to me always feeling a little bit in fear and always on edge and just not safe in the world. It was a time of collective fear. Fear was high on all sides. Anger started to rise on all sides. So at some point during 2021, I started to not look at social media so much. I started to try to walk away from it, to move away from it, to look at it less and less. But of course, over the years, it has more and more has creeped into my feeds, has creeped into my life until it's on all my social media channels and feeds. And it's just a regular part of my day to scroll through all of these stories. And I guess I would call it doom scrolling, fear scrolling, and just looking at all these stories. Even though for me, I had convinced myself that it actually made me feel safe to know all of these things, to be aware of all these things. I know that that's not true. I know that the deeper part of me actually felt unsettled and actually was living in fear over a future that I had no control over. So here's how this came about. Every fall is a triggering time for me. It's a time period in which historically, when it's cold and flu season and when my kids start to bring home colds and flus, if I catch it, often over the years, a cold would lead to a setback in symptoms, a reemergence in symptoms. And so I'm always very nervous, living in some fear. I'm always very triggered around this time of year. What's going to happen? It feels out of my control. Am I going to catch something? Am I going to be set back? What is going to happen? Especially because some of the setbacks have been very, very minor. Some I haven't had at all, and a few have been quite major. 4 years ago, I had a major setback when I contracted pneumonia. I had a massive reemergence of all of my symptoms. I felt like I was right back at square one, and they stayed for a period of time, which was very, very unsettling. And so I get really nervous in the fall, like, oh my gosh, what is happening? I can feel me starting to look into the past and starting to feel a little off, dysregulated, and just feeling the sort of PTSD, emotional traumas of it all, kind of underneath the surface. And because I knew this was election season, and because my feed was full of news as well as everything else that I love, and health and spirituality and everything that I love, but a good portion of it was politics. And I know that this is a very dysregulating time for me, given that it's fall, given that it's cold and flu season, given that my kids had just come home in late September with the first big colds and flus of the year. and the heat of the election and politics was ramping up to an all-time high. And I said, I need to do something. And so I took a drastic step that I never thought I would take. I took a drastic step that I've wanted to take for 4 years, but never had the guts to do. So what I did was I went into my YouTube feed and I deleted all almost 2,000 subscriptions, people and channels that I have subscribed to over the entire time that I've watched YouTube. These are subscriptions that I have come to love, people that I've come to love their videos. These are subscriptions and people that I've subscribed to over the last decade that I've really been attached to and really like to see. So going in and deleting my entire feed was crazy to me. But I knew that I wanted to put my health first this fall, particularly since my kids had just brought home the colds and flus. It was election season ramping up, and I knew that I needed to step into a different reality, a reality where none of these politics were in my feeds. I wanted to start from scratch, and I knew that I couldn't go in and look at all 2,000 and try to delete them one by one and try to figure out who I should delete and who I should keep. And so that it was best to just make a clean cut. So I went in one foul swoop and deleted everything, everything. And then I went and did it on all of my other social media apps. I just deleted everything, starting from scratch. So over the last 60 days, I have only subscribed to under 50 people on YouTube, just channels that I love, that are positive, that make me feel good, that make me feel joyful, that have nothing to do with news or politics or anything. And so I've had a very narrow band back in my algorithmic feed. And all I'm seeing are things of joy and love and happiness and things that I think are fun and interesting and has nothing to do with anything going on in the world whatsoever. And so during the last 60 days, I have been super positive, super regulated, super healthy. I haven't caught the cold or the flu. My whole world has shifted from one change. I didn't know it would make such a huge, massive impact on me that it has. I honestly thought I would be regretting not knowing what's going on in the world and not getting all these feeds, because it was very difficult for me to delete these things that I have grown to love and grown accustomed to and grown to be a natural part of my day to look at these stories. So deleting them was a little bit sad for the first week. I did feel like I was missing something in the first week, but then I just grew to love the channels that I was watching. I felt happier. I felt more grounded. I felt more regulated. I felt more loving. I felt more happy. I felt everything started to feel better than I've ever felt. And so when my son said to me today, "Who do you think is going to win the election?" I was literally floored because I had forgotten that the election was tomorrow. It had slipped my mind. It wasn't on my radar in any way. I have had no input in politics or any kind of story over the last 60 days whatsoever, that it isn't even part of my world anymore, to the point that I didn't even remember there was an election tomorrow. I mean, that's insane. And so now that he's put it back on my radar, of course, I am curious. I am going to find out who wins tomorrow. But I might have gone through the entire election not even knowing, which I think is absolutely crazy. And it has made a huge positive impact in my life, in my nervous system, in my family, in my relationships with my family, in everything. I just feel like I am a happier person. And I didn't know that all of that I was consuming every day was causing me some problems. I didn't know how unhealthy it was for me. I mean, I did know, but now that I've completely got rid of it from my life, it's astounding how much better I feel, how much healthier, how much more vibrant, how much more loving, how much more positive. Everything feels so much better. And I'm actually focused on what I want, on my life, on my family, on my world, on creating all the goodness and feeling the joy and the love. And that's all I see, because that's all that's in my feed and that's all that's in my world. And so this has been an incredible shift that I didn't even know was going to happen when I made this decision. And so I wanted to share it with you today, because Go do what you need to do tomorrow. Vote, do your thing. But I am going to recommend that you give what I did a try, because there is going to be a lot of post-election craziness. There's going to be a lot of post-election politics that is just rampant out there. No matter who wins, no matter what side wins, there's going to be a lot of blame. There's going to be a lot of crying foul. There's going to be a lot of tension rising, anger's rising, negativity. All of it is going to rise after this election, and there's going to be a whole post craziness that is going to happen. And I am so happy that I am not even going to know about it. I'm not even going to be aware of it. And it's not even going to be a part of my world. And this has been the best decision that I've ever made. And even though at one point I was super invested in who won this election and knowing what was going to happen and feeling safe and doing everything that I could to keep my family safe and exit the matrix and all of these things, it has been such a joy to not have that underlying pressure in my life, to not have that underlying negativity and that underlying fear. It's just gone. And it only took 60 days. So I could imagine if I go an entire year, just what a shift, what a different timeline I'll be walking in and living in. And so I wanted to share this with you today as we head into the election, as we head into the post-election craziness. And I wanted to remind you that taking care of your nervous system, that regulating your nervous system, that creating and focusing on love and joy and peace and calm in your body and in your world leads to healing, is one of the most important healing things you can do. And so even though the collective might be dysregulated, might be negative, might be filled with fear, you don't have to be. And so I hope you've enjoyed this video today. I hope you've gotten some inspiration from it. And I'm wishing you tons of peace and love and regulation in this post-election craziness to come. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and watch this one on how to regulate your nervous system. It's a really important video for healing, and it cannot be underestimated. I hope you've enjoyed our little talk this morning, and I will see you in the next video.